disruptive.
America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen. So we got a bit of some celebrity news for you, a little star-crossed power, ladies and gentlemen, because Jerry Seinfeld has been making some attention lately. He recently did some interviews discussing about how comedy isn't the same as it used to be, and he blames the woke left for basically killing the idea of comedy as it once was. Going from that to cozying up to Zionism with the Israeli genocide that's going on right now on Palestinians, and also the controversy surrounding him dating a 17-year-old student. I'm surprised that swept under the radar for so many years, and now it's again resurfaced, and I don't think much is going to happen to that. But you know who's actually commenting about Jerry Seinfeld's comments is his former co-star, ladies and gentlemen, Julia Louis Dreyfus, who you may know as Elaine Bennis, or if you know her recently from her television years on HBO's Veep, which that I can only tell you about the show, because being broke in here in Canada, you don't really know much about HBO programming other than just titles that you've seen on advertisements. So it says, Julia Louis Dreyfus says criticism like Jerry Seinfeld's of political correctness is a red flag, according to her. I think to have an antenna about sensitivities is not a bad thing. It doesn't mean that all comedy goes out the window as a result, she told the New York Times. This is from NBC News, and this is kind of an interesting take. So she says, Julia Louis Dreyfus countered former co-star Jerry Seinfeld's comments blaming political correctness for killing comedy, saying that having an antenna about sensitivities is a good thing, and that such PC bashing is a red flag. Seinfeld made headlines for his April interview with The New Yorker, in which he said funny stuff on TV, such as the golden era sitcoms Cheers and Mary Tyler Moore Show, doesn't exist anymore. Unless you're watching streaming services I think they're on. This is the result of the extreme left and PC crap and people worrying so much about offending other people, he said. Louis Dreyfus, who played Elaine Bennis on Seinfeld, challenged that take in an interview with the New York Times published Saturday. When I hear people starting to complain about political correctness, and I understand why people might push back on it, but to me, that's a red flag, because it sometimes means something else, she says. I believe being aware of certain sensitivities is not a bad thing. I don't know how else to say it. She said that looking back on comedy and drama from 30 years ago through today's lens, you might find bits and pieces that don't well. I think to have an antenna about sensitivities is not a bad thing. It doesn't mean that all comedy goes out the window as a result, she says. In a follow-up conversation 11 days after her original interview, she returned to the topic of political correctness. She states, my feelings about all of this is that political correctness, insofar as it equates to tolerance, is obviously fantastic. And of course, I reserve the right to boo anyone who says anything that offends me, while also respecting their right to free speech. He added that, in her opinion, a bigger problem and threat to art is consolidation of money and power. All this siloing of studios and outlets and streamers and distributors, I don't think it's good for the creative voice. So that's what I want to say in terms of a threat to art. Yes. So this is kind of an actually interesting take on the whole perspective of woke and comedy and art form, because in order to have the conversation of woke and political correctness, people always like to think of it as a black and white issue, like it's one side or the other. You're either, the people that can't take a joke, or you're offending so much about it. But they don't ever have a nuanced conversation about what it actually details of the political correctness versus the consolidation, as she says there, is the consolidation practices of these big entities that are pushing these politics. And there's a lot of a battleground issue to talk about woke and identity politics and stuff like this. So in a way, I almost kind of agree with a lot with Julia Louis Dreyfus when she states that, you know, yes, you can have comedy, you can have uh offensive jokes, but you can also have in order to have a free society, in order to have free speech and everyone to have their own individual thoughts and freedoms, there is going to be that case where people are not going to take a joke well, or things are not going to age well, or they're not going to view it in the same way that you might see it. And that's kind of the whole perspective of art. That's kind of the whole perspective and the notion of being a true artist. And being a true artist, your whole lifelong journey is to find that audience that connects with you. It may not be as simple as, presenting yourself in front of a crowded subway system and just chanting to people. You may have to spend some time cultivating and finding out where exactly you lie in all this. And it's a more difficult conversation to process all this, the ideals of what woke really is, because all the over time and all the years, woke has had different meanings and different interpretations on what that word actually means. Does woke mean the original aspect of tolerance and understanding and appreciation of one another and different, practices and beliefs of different people? Or is woke the now kind of business incentivized political push that corporations like Disney and BlackRock have incorporated into their business practice in order to boost their kind of business agenda towards an audience? And that is the whole point of why Disney went woke and why BlackRock is incorporated. And even take to example, right now, it's June, so obviously it's Pride Month. And one of the big things right now we're seeing is a lot of corporations are changing their logo to the pride flag. Why would they do that? Does it have anything to do with them actually supporting gay people and gay rights? Do they actually support the notions that gay people represent any other customer than you and me? No, but they're trying to use that to signal themselves as some sort of, hey, look at us. We're deeply involved in the gay community, even though they don't change their actual business ethics to reflect that. They're still going through their same usual business criminal crap that they would always go through, but they can reflect that using the lens of identity politics to make themselves look better. And that has a lot to do with consolidation and money, where she points out. So it's an intricate conversation to have about this. And it's not as easy as just saying, we got to allow people to be offensive, and anyone that can't take a joke, just shut the hell up. Like, it can't just be that. There has to be a kind of gray area. There has to be some sort of, in order to have a free-filling society of many individuals in this world, we're going to have this kind of ideal system is to, yes, we can have people that say, I don't like this joke in this way. But you know what? As that person, you're not obligated to listen to people like Jerry Seinfeld. You're not obligated to watch whatever comedy. And that's the beauty of, I think right now too, is this isn't the 90s anymore. We're here on YouTube and Rumble presenting this program to you. It's not like back in the day, in order for us to even have a show, you would have to contain yourself within broadcast television. You have to go to a broadcaster and pitch yourself that, hey, I need to be part of you, and here's what I'll do for you. You don't have to do that anymore because now we have the internet, we have podcasts, we have YouTube and Rumble and X and all these different streaming platforms that allows people to find their audience and able to express themselves regardless of what the viewing audience reacts to it. And I always said, when I started this channel, that I respect my audience because they're the ones watching me and encouraging me to do this, program frequently and to do this show. And I thank you for watching what we do here on this channel and supporting this channel as much as you can. I respect that, but I don't think I'm being ruled by the audience. I don't have that mob mentality attacking or demonizing what I say. And if people don't like what I have to say, by all means, there's other platforms that you can go towards. There's other people you can be watching. You don't have to listen to what I'm saying. You're not obligated. You're not forced to sit down and watch and agree with everything I'm saying. You have different avenues to go to. You have different destinations to go to. And that is the beautiful part of art. That's the beautiful part of being a true artist, whether it be comedy, painting, sculpting, theater, poetry. There's so many different interpretations. People interpret things so differently than other people that some people may look at something and think it's artistic, whereas somebody else may think it's garbage, and vice versa. And that's okay. That's okay because that is part of being a human being. That's part of a society. You're going to have those people that are going to think differently than you and are going to be acceptable of some jokes and not okay with other jokes and like this program compared to this or so on and so forth and think this picture is great, but this is actually gruesome to me. That's the whole purpose of being a true artist, is that you're able to find your audience regardless, and you're not contain yourself to the broadcast networks of the 80s and 90s. Like, you have individuals now that are producing content like this. They're interviewing people. It's not like, in order to get an interview now, you don't have to go through the hurdles of Larry King or Oprah Winfrey or Ricky Lake or any of the talk shows back in the day. Now, almost anybody can be a talk show representative to have an interview. People go on to Joe Rogan. They go to Logan Paul. They go to Patrick Bet-David. They go on Jimmy Dore's show. They go on to Kim Iverson, Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, all these different individuals. So they don't have to go through the containment of a typical broadcast network that's going to contain them to whatever stature they're imposing to their audience. And that's the beauty of where we are right now. I think it's more beneficial now and more open. Yes, you're still going to have containments of being on YouTube, being in consolidation with Google and big tech organizations. And yes, we do complain about censorship because, let's face it, I'm a free speech advocate, and a lot of practices that YouTube is putting onto podcasters and news presenters can be subjective and controversial. But that's, again, where opinions matter, regardless of how you feel about that person's opinion or if you how you interpret it. You have to respect that there's both sides to this argument, that each side of the woke coin or this argument needs to be acknowledged to have that healthy middle ground that allows people to be accepted in the society. That's the tolerance aspect of it. That, you can say what you want about any individual. You could say what you want about any television show. You could say that 16 Candles from the 80s is not as par as it is today. But that is just someone's opinion. It doesn't mean that everyone has to obligate towards that opinion. It just means that someone may not view it in the same way as they did back in the 80s. And that doesn't mean it's a threat to that movie. It just means that someone may disagree with it. So I kind of have to take the side of Elaine Bennis on this when it comes to political correctness. Now, personally, do I think political correctness goes a bit too far when it comes to comedy and stuff like that? Yes. I'll be honest. Yes, there is times where political correctness oversees true intentions of comedy. But again, it's not a black and white issue. It's not as simple as putting up a light switch and just forcing everyone to, deal with everyone's joke. And if someone disagrees with you, then obviously they can't take it, or they're offended by that, or they're just cowards. That's not the case. There is going to be a bit of buffer between this two sides of this. And in order to have a healthy, sustainable society of tolerance and value of everyone else's opinion, including yourself, you have to look at the whole aspect of understanding that people don't think alike as you, and you're going to have people that are okay with it, are not okay with it, and have different versions of what can be acceptable in society. But I don't think it should be contained, that society has to dictate it under those demands. I just think that you can acknowledge people's differences of opinions and be okay with it, whether being on the quote unquote offensive side or the non-offensive side. However you look at it, that's what we have to do as a society. So I think Julia Louis-Dreyfus definitely has a point with this. And I love that she also added in the fact that money and consolidation of a lot of these businesses and streaming services does put an impact when it comes to comedy. I mean, you think of typical stand-ups these days, the ones that are getting the big business deals, the kind of comedy that they produce compared to, the more edgier comedians that still have to do nightclubs, that still have to do, in the dark alleys. And you know what? You can have that going on. There's a lot of successful comedians that only do TikTok. There's a lot of successful comedians that just post their stuff on YouTube. They don't have to go through the hurdles of Comedy Central or HBO or any of these broadcast networks to be a famous comedian. There's a lot of great comics that just record and go onto YouTube, and they eventually get an audience. They build up a reputation, and they can make a good money off it. So that's kind of the way we're in right now, and I hope to preserve that kind of value that we're in right now. But it does seem like, because a lot of these big entities like Disney and BlackRock and Vanguard and a lot of these giant corporations that have a stranglehold in the media in the first place have incorporated identity politics to shield themselves with this. It's not helpful to the beneficial of society. And in order for us to have a sustained society of values of differences of opinion, we need to look at the whole specter of this and have a full conversation, Not just simple black and white, but look at all the different levels that different people are going to interpret things that are different to you. I think that's the big thing. That's very, very philosophical kind of approach to that conversation, rather than just saying, well, everybody's just offended all the time. You know, it's not the 80s, it's not the 90s. Yes, we are evolving, and people do think differently than you. And maybe Jerry Seinfeld, just instead of looking through a narrow lens, needs to open himself up a little bit more to a nuanced conversation about all of this.